I knew pretty much nothing about this movie going into it, just that it was based off a series of young adult novels and had a somewhat similar plot to The Hunger Games. Dystopian world, kids in life threatening situations, etc. Hello, and welcome back to another installment of Film Friday, in which I review a new film every single week. This week we're looking at the 2014 film The Maze Runner, directed by Wes Ball and starring Dylan O'Brien. As always, this will contain some spoilers, so consider yourself warned. Let's get into it. While this movie may have been similar to something like The Hunger Games, it did have a more mysterious element to it, in that it was not entirely clear what was going on, but it was clear that things were not as they seemed. However, I will say, once it was all revealed at the end, it did feel a little anticlimactic. It wasn't as much of a conspiracy as it should have been, given how much lead up to it there was. But, to be fair, the final ending scene, which I assume sets up the rest of the series, did make it clear that not all our questions had been answered, and not all the answers we had been given were correct. However, during the bulk of the film, I still felt like I was missing half of what was going on, because everything was explained in the vaguest terms possible, which actually made no sense from the perspective of the plot. This teenager, Thomas, wakes up on an elevator which takes him into a glade in the middle of a giant maze. This glade is full of other kids around his age who have formed a sort of society. The elite members of the group are known as maze runners, and their job is to run through, explore, and map out the maze. But everything about the maze, and even the glade itself, is presented as some sort of big secret that has to be kept from Thomas. Which is weird because all the kids around him clearly know what's going on, because they're half explaining everything to him. But he's not allowed to know. And you'd figure he'd have to learn it all eventually in order to live there, just like they did. Also, the depth of the characters was very much lacking. Whenever any of them died, I felt no emotion whatsoever, which I'm not sure was the goal of the filmmakers, but maybe. So, story-wise, it was okay, but there was some pretty major need for improvement. From a technical perspective, the camera work was decent, but not always realistic. For instance, there was one particular shot which stood out and distracted me from the entire scene in which it was used. Towards the beginning of the film, there's a scene in which two of the characters are talking on a sort of balcony, and they decided to shoot this using a handheld camera positioned off the balcony. This would have required the cameraman to be suspended in midair off the balcony on which the characters were talking, which makes it kind of an odd choice to use a handheld camera for that shot. The soundtrack for this film was pretty good, without being great, which sums up this movie perfectly. It was decent, with good entertainment value. Fun to watch, without being a great, deep, or original movie. Overall, my rating for The Maze Runner would be a 6 out of 10. It was above average, but not by much. However, I may watch the rest of the movies in the series, as I am somewhat curious to know what happens next. With that being said, thank you for watching, and make sure to comment your own thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more movie reviews and commentary.